What you're about to see isn't just a tense exchange. It's one of those rare moments when a member of Congress holds up a mirror to a government official who has been working very hard to avoid accountability. Representative Jill Tokuda from Hawaii did something we don't see often enough. She asked simple questions that...
Here now recognized as a gentlelady from Hawaii, Ms. Tokuda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I agree we've had many performances today, but what we'd like is some answers. Mr. Secretary, did you invite Elon Musk for a briefing on war plans with China to the Pentagon? Yes or no is simple.
There's been a lot of hyperbole and incorrect reporting around that situation, but we did invite Elon over to come talk to us generally, but there was no war plans being discussed.
Okay, so whose idea was it to invite him to the Pentagon for a briefing? You mentioned you served at the pleasure of the president. Was it the president's will to have him come and be briefed?
As you know, at that time, Elon Musk was leading up DOGE efforts, and we've taken a great investment in DOGE at DOD, and so getting his input on how we make DOD more efficient makes a great deal of sense.
Okay, but don't you think it's a conflict of interest for the world's richest man? Many of the contracts that the DOD is engaged in, billions of dollars of contracts going to his company, and he is, as to your point, was leading DOGE, which was involved in cutting hundreds of contracts, but also becoming intimately aware of the platforms and the requirements that would be given out for new contracts. Did you not think it was a conflict of interest to invite someone with financial interests into the Pentagon to have firsthand knowledge of what they could then bid on for their own, enrichment?
Ma'am, it was just an informal discussion, but I'll tell you, anyone that knows our Defense Department knows we show no preference to any company other than what your capabilities are, and we're grateful for the places where his companies benefit our national defense.
So for a $280 million donation, the world's richest man with companies intimately linked and involved in billion-dollar contracts with the Department of Defense gain access into the Pentagon. So would you say that any company right now that has multi-billion-dollar contracts with the Department of Defense has access to the Pentagon right now? 1-hour briefings with you personally?
On the regular basis, I meet with many people and many different companies and many different aspects of our defense industrial base to ensure we have the best possible capabilities. It would be imprudent to do
Well, I'm sure for an investment of $280 million, Elon's investors are quite happy that it's come out into the billions. I want to jump questions right now. Mr. Secretary, on January 6, 2021, rioters and looters attacked federal law enforcement officials, vandalized and destroyed federal government property, and caused an estimated $2.7 billion in damages right here at the Capitol. Would you have sent the National Guard and the Marines in on that day?
Well, unfortunately, President Trump requested the National Guard in advance, and that was...
It took him quite a long time. I'm asking you, as Secretary of Defense, would you have sent in the National Guard and the Marines on that day? We had 140 Capitol Police officers injured. One died the next day. Would you have sent in the National Guard and the Marines?
As I said, President Trump directed National Guard to be there in advance.
And I think you can look at the record of how long it actually took for him to actually send them in. But it's good to hear that it sounds like you would have sent in the National Guard and the Marines on that day in which the insurrection was taking place right here at the Capitol. Mr. Secretary, during your confirmation hearing, you failed to deny the conclusion that you would carry out an order to shoot protesters in the legs. So let me be direct. Given what we are seeing across the country right now, would you carry out or issue an order by the president for our military to fire upon protesters actively engaging in their civil right to exercise free speech, their First Amendment rights? Would you give that order from the president?
I assume you're insinuating what's going on in Los Angeles, and I wouldn't...
Not just Los Angeles. If we take a look at protests throughout the country, it's a simple question. If directed by the president, would you order our military to fire upon protesters? Simple yes or no.
Ma'am, we have, as you know, and as this committee knows, we have standard rules of engagement that are in place that give guidance to our troops, and they abide by them.
I'm asking what you would do. Again, you said you serve at the pleasure of the president. Is that not true?
I do serve at the pleasure.
So if the president told you to shoot people in the legs, would you do so? Now, you failed to answer this question as only a confirmation hearing when asked by members of the Senate.
Because I refuse to accept a false hypothetical that's attempting to put me in a corner and make it look like a representative.
At a time when we have more Marines and National Guard in Los Angeles than we do in Syria and Iran alone, I don't think this is a hypothetical. This is an actual situation that we are dealing with right now. So again, I will ask the question, the last 14 seconds I have, would you order our military to shoot at their fellow countrymen, if ordered by the president?
I think it's interesting that for 4 years, insurrection was the left's
I think we
favorite
know your
word.
answer. Thank you, Mr.
And
Chair.
that
I
when
yield back.
invoked in L.A., they were
Gentlelady yields back. Gentlelady's time's expired.
Deserved simple answers, and the fact that she couldn't get those answers tells us far more than anything the secretary actually said. Let's start with Elon Musk. Tokuda pressed on a point that should concern anyone who believes in fairness in government contracting. The Pentagon invited the world's richest man, someone whose companies receive billions in federal contracts, inside for a personal Pentagon meeting. Think about what that means. Most companies spend years navigating bureaucracy, audits, and compliance reviews just to be considered for a modest federal contract. But Elon Musk, fresh off a $280 million donation and holding massive financial stakes in defense technologies, gets a private briefing at the Pentagon? Tokuda's line of questioning cuts right to the heart of the issue. When powerful individuals can access top officials behind closed doors, it shapes policy, contracts, and priorities in ways ordinary Americans never get to see. That is why conflict of interest laws exist. That is why transparency matters. And that is exactly why the secretary refused to give her a straight answer, because the appearance of favoritism is unavoidable. Then there's the January 6th question. Tokuda wasn't asking a trick question. She was trying to establish a baseline. When our democracy is physically under attack, when federal officers are assaulted, when elected members are forced to hide, what should the Secretary of Defense do? This is one of the clearest constitutional responsibilities of the military: the defense of the nation, the continuity of government, and the protection of lawful processes. Instead of answering, the secretary pivoted to talking points, timelines, and political blame. And that's exactly why Tokuda pushed, because if he cannot say plainly that the National Guard should be deployed to protect the Capitol during an insurrection, that should alarm everyone watching. But the most critical moment came at the end. The question she asked repeatedly, calmly, directly, and with total clarity: would you follow a presidential order to have the military fire on American protesters? This is not a hypothetical for political theater. America has a long and painful history of state violence against its own citizens, from Kent State to civil rights marches to anti-war protests. The question is not about ideology, it's about the boundaries of power. What Tokuda was doing was forcing him to confront the core principle that separates a democracy from an authoritarian state. The military does not turn its weapons on civilians exercising their constitutional rights. Instead of affirming that principle, the secretary dodged again and again. He hid behind procedure, he hid behind semantics, he hid behind political talking points, and in the process, he revealed something deeper: that our systems rely far too much on the personal discretion of individuals in power rather than ironclad commitments to democratic norms. Tokuda's questioning highlights a fundamental truth. Democracy isn't self-sustaining. It requires officials who understand the gravity of their roles, who put constitutional rights above political loyalty, and who refuse unlawful orders no matter the pressure. Her insistence matters because the stakes aren't theoretical. We live in a time when political violence is rising, when armed groups show up at protests, when misinformation spreads faster than facts, and when democracy itself is under strain. We cannot afford leaders who won't answer basic questions about the limits of state force. Tokuda made something very clear. When someone holds the power to deploy the U.S. military, we deserve to know who they serve, the Constitution or the president. And if a senior official can't say, with hesitation, that they would never authorize firing on their own citizens, then the public deserves to be concerned. If you want more breakdowns like this, more clarity, more context, and more honest explanations about what's happening inside our government, make sure you subscribe, turn on notifications, and stay with this channel. The more we understand, the harder it becomes for those in power to hide behind vague answers. Knowledge is how we safeguard our democracy.